Early bird life. In the years gone by, the thickly timbered hill slope gullies behind the old Pimpama Hotel harbored a great number of families of bellbirds, whose tinkling music added a rare charm to these beautiful jungle-clad ravines, their delicate tintinnabulations filling the air with fairy melody. Lately I visited friends in that locality, and in reply to inquiries, was told that these birds disappeared ages ago and were never met with nowadays. At one time, before a big and comprehensive system of drainage of the many swamp areas around Carrara and Benoa, on either bank of the Nerang River, the big birds we call swamp redbills and the abos call wogai were a real pest to the sugar farmers. Invading the standing sugar cane, they had a habit of eating away with their powerful beaks the sticks near the ground, with the result that, when a breeze sprang up, all the mutilated cane fell to the ground. Now that their former haunts, the reedy swamps, have been transformed into grazing lands and farms, these birds have disappeared entirely. At one period during the early days of Southport, numbers of red-shoulder or crimson-wing parrots put in an appearance, and as they had previously been unknown in that part of the state, their sudden advent was the subject of much speculation. I learned that on the occasion of the wreck of the homeward-bound ship, Young Australia, near Cape Morton some years earlier, someone had opened the doors of a large aviary aboard to release the birds from captivity, and among them were a number of red-shoulders. They had flown from the ship to the timber of Morton Island, and later spread south to Stradbroke, eventually extending as far as the southern extremity of that island, and thence to the mainland at Southport. Judging from the numbers of birds, they must have bred whilst on the islands, but upon reaching the mainland their fatal beauty made them a target for every gun in the place, and in almost no time they were completely wiped out. When the site of the present railway station at Southport was in a state of virgin nature, there were a number of nutmeg or cork trees growing thereon, which in season bore great numbers of plum-like fruit. One season these trees attracted immense numbers of flock pigeons, perhaps because their seasonal food on the mountains had failed. They were easily approached to within gunshot range, and during the 3 or 4 weeks of full fruiting, great bags of these birds were shot. One Sunday morning 5 of us with guns tallied in over 200 birds, and many more fell at a distance from the trees, and which we did not trouble to scout for. They were served up at every meal, cooked in all sorts of ways, until finally everyone became sick of them. The birds, however, never put in an appearance again at that place, though they thronged the fruiting trees of the nearby scrubs. On occasions when prolonged gales and stormy weather obtained along the coast, an amazing number of seabirds might be picked up in an exhausted condition from battling against the elements, even including such long flighters as frigate birds, and I remember on one occasion when the cap covering of the cover of the Pacific Hotel had been inadvertently left open overnight, we found the room there full of various kinds of seagulls, which were easily captured by hand. After one such gale, when a dead calm set in, an invasion of small flies came. They were as small as grains of gunpowder, and of similar blue-black color, and were beyond the ken of anyone. They came in such countless numbers that they extinguished every light, lamp, or candle in the place, including all the river and bay leading lights. Luckily they did not sting, but when morning dawned it was found that all the walls of the houses and the ceilings were as though freshly painted a gunpowder blue color from the myriads of little flies covering them. What they were, or where they came from, we could never find out, and we were grateful that this was the only visitation of the pests. It was almost in the nature of a religious observance or obligation for these old-timers to visit the city on the occasion of the Queen's birthday races. Many from all over the district rode from their distant homes, or camps, for the only time in the year to foregather in the city, there to swap 12 months' accumulated and overdue yarns to the accompaniment of tinkling glasses. Practically all from the Logan, Albert, and Coomera districts put up at Harry Biggs's Steam Packet Hotel, situated on grounds bordering on the now filled-in creek, which in those days discharged into the river about where the steam punt ferry approaches are at present. This creek at its mouth was large enough to accommodate small cutters, which lay there and took in, or discharged their loading, and traded to the settlements, on the various rivers at the southern end of the bay. All horses were stabled in the hotel grounds, and were taken out only when the mob rode out to the great race of the day. I, though a mere lad, was occasionally accorded the privilege of accompanying my father to this annual festival, riding my own horse. When the muster of nags was made for a start home, the customary libation was poured out and imbibed before mounting and starting for the ferry at William Street Baxter's, as it was called, where we punted across the river. Upon landing on the south side, a helter-skelter gallop ensued to the last pub on the outskirts of the town, Scanlon's Fancy it was called, where the last to arrive had to pay for drinks. Mounted again, another race was started, with its winning post at the 8 Mile Plains, and still another spin to another pub about 1.5 miles further on, with the same losing penalty in each race. It might be inferred that these old-timers were a drunken lot, but such was not really the case, for they only indulged to excess on such rare occasions as above described, and for the rest of the year they were quite abstemious, as a class. It was not until permanent settlement, with a central township as a rallying point, was firmly established that insobriety became noticeable. They were on the whole a very free-spending lot, whenever they were able to indulge in the luxury of handling cash. This improvidence was perhaps most conspicuous among the raft timber getters. Upon reaching their destination with their logs of cedar and other timbers, they received big checks from the sawmillers, and forthwith laid in a year's supplies of food before returning to the scrubs, at the heads of the rivers. Kegs of rum, which they averred were so useful in case of snakebite, formed no inconsiderable portion of their cargo, but very little of this beverage ever reached their camps, owing to their frequent halts at the bay, and other camps en route where they dealt out lavish liquid hospitality.